You've
Mm-hmm.
skipped right past whether or not the religious moral system in question is advocating for something that is moral or immoral.
If it wasn't true, would you still vote for that because you think it's effective?
Yes. Yes, I think so.
So you're willing to advocate for things that you don't think are true in order to manipulate people. What happens when they find out that the thing you use to manipulate them isn't true? Hi, everyone. Thanks for watching. Most of the content on my channel is supported by generous patrons, but made available for free to the entire world. If you support that, please consider adding your support at patreon.com/atheistdebates. This clip, however, is from one of the many programs that I do on YouTube on The Line. And if you liked it, feel free to visit, like, subscribe, and watch The Line Network live. Thank you. D is calling from Las Vegas. D is a theist that says religious morality has an ethical advantage over secular moral beliefs. D, you're on with Brady and Matt. Welcome to the show.
Hi guys, thanks for having me on. This is
Sure.
kind of my first time ever doing anything like this, so yeah, hoping we'll have a good talk.
Cool. So let's just maybe, I don't know how you wanted to do this, but if we assume that you're advocating for something like divine command, or it's something where there's a God being that is the foundation of morality, you're claiming that that has advantages over secular moral systems that I might advocate for. Is that right?
Yeah, okay. Maybe I should back up and maybe I should first kind of establish that maybe I'm thinking of religious morality almost more anthropologically, kind of how it functions. We don't necessarily have to get into my like bong rip theology, as you might call it, in terms of what I think God is or what its existence means to me. But more just the role that religious morality plays in society. Yeah. Go ahead.
So I want to make sure that we're not going to go wasting some time. I would agree that if you have a top-down, forceful, authoritarian thou shalt system, that is going to be more effective at getting people to do what you want. I don't necessarily agree that it makes anyone more moral, because that depends. I mean, you could be, fascistic about immoral use.
I agree. It's not about an authoritarian kind of mode of creating social order. To me, I think it's more. To me, I think the unique thing about religious morality, and there have been some anthropological thinkers who have thought along these lines, but it's more that that religious morality is an emotional appeal that kind of underlies and sometimes overrides logical and rational appeals to being good.
Why is that a good thing?
And I think that's a good thing because I think sometimes being good requires individuals to make sacrifices for the whole. And I think sometimes it's too easy for people to slip into an individualistic, solipsistic kind of point of view where they're not willing to make sacrifices for others.
So let me make sure I'm understanding this. You've skipped right past whether or not the religious moral system in question is advocating for something that is moral or immoral, and gone straight to the strategy issue of, you think there are people who aren't going to do the right thing unless you motivate them fallaciously. And so you're advocating for fallacious reasoning?
Well, I think emotional appeals to morality are easy to make. I think there's kind of there's a natural synergy there. And I think that's why when you look at what like the actual core principles are, and if you like kind of shed some of the anachronistic stuff from a lot of religions, like the core principles are usually pretty charitable and good. And, this is something I'm sure you would kind of acknowledge all the time, but then you would bring up the fact that you should be able to rationally arrive at those same moral principles, right?
Well, so this is the thing, D. I was asking kind of questions to direct this. I definitely want to get Brady in here. You haven't said anything about why a religious system is more moral than a secular one. And your only reasoning for advocating it as a strategy is that you somehow arrogantly think that you can figure out right and wrong reasonably, but other people need this manipulative thing. And I just find that incredibly condescending. Brady?
Well, I would want to know, why isn't emotivism more effective than a theist or top-down based moral structure? It seems like you're keying in on what emotions do to motivate someone to behave a certain way. Why not just go to emotivism?
What's emotivism? I'm not familiar with that term.
Emotivism basically traces our moral grounding to getting people to identify what makes us feel a certain way. Do we feel better or do we feel worse about certain actions, about certain axioms? And if we feel better about those axioms, that's a hint as to what the right thing is. That sounds more like what you're talking about than something that a God would have to come down to tell us.
Yeah, I suppose that is. I suppose that is what I'm arguing for. Religious emotivism. Yeah, I think that.
Well, not religious. Well, I think what Matt is saying, what I'm now saying is, you don't need religion for that. All you need to do is identify what motivates people. Like, how do we feel about X? Whatever the subject is, cruelty to animals. How do we feel about that? How does that make us feel? You don't need to bring a
Yeah,
God into it for that.
I think what religion offers that really facilitates that kind of emotivism, though, is just kind of a motivating feeling that there's like a unity of life, and that there's a form of divinity that kind of binds us all together, um, in a kind of a spiritual manner. Like, I think there's a lot of value to that when it comes to directing
But
people's
do you
motivation.
think that's true?
Um, yeah, I do. On a metaphysical level, we can get into that if you want.
Yeah,
Um,
because I don't think that's true, and I think that's
I also
relevant
don't think it
because
really matters to
Well, I
my
was going to
immediate
say,
argument whether or not it's true. But yeah,
I was going to ask the question: if it wasn't true, would you still vote for that because you think it's
um,
effective?
yes, yes, I think so.
so you're willing to advocate for things that you don't think are true in order to manipulate people. What happens when they find out that the thing you use to manipulate them isn't true? Are they going to stick to the
Mhm.
conclusion you wanted them to reach?
Well, I don't think you have to really worry about that because it's unfalsifiable, right?
What happens, D, when they find out it's unfalsifiable and therefore can't be affirmed as true and therefore shouldn't be used as a foundation or a syllogism that results in being convinced of something?
I think what happens is kind of what you're seeing with this kind of new trend of like progressive Christianity. It's what you guys were kind of just talking about, I think, which is that people kind of pivot towards understanding these things metaphorically, allegorically. You turn them into
That has nothing. That
morality
has
lessons.
nothing to
Yeah.
do with whether or not it's true, or whether or not you're advocating for anything good, or whether or not you're
Well, sure
being.
it does. It's stories
No,
aren't
it doesn't.
true, but
And
there's a
interrupt
moral
me
message.
again. That
That's
would be a really bad idea.
apologies. Sorry. Yeah, just trying to respond.
So I care about what's true,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't want to run around infantilizing people and suggesting that, well, you're not bright enough to not need religion in order to do the right thing. But also, I don't see religions encouraging people to do the right thing. And in the world that we currently live in, I would argue that um, I don't know how you deal with one religion saying one thing about morality and another religion saying something else about morality. Religions deal with um, conversion and coercion in order to get people to agree and obey and adhere. And when you get multiple religions um, that are in conflict, you're stuck. Whereas secular moral systems deal in data and discussion and debates and follow the evidence where it leads. So you're basically saying whether something is true or not is independent or not valuable in determining how and what we should teach people about morality. And I can't follow that.
Well, okay. Well, first of all, I'm curious. Like, how much of what we spot in terms of like sort of objectionable Christian morality, um, how much of that is like the loudest and most disgusting voices getting the most attention, or do we have like sociological data on like how many Christians are just like chill and kind of progressive? Because that's my own experience as a Christian. I grew up in like a Christian Universalist church, and they had a very kind of they had a lot of success by emphasizing the sort of moral community building aspects of Christianity, while also holding this line that all religions are pathways to God and towards being
so they were
good.
heretics. So they were heretics because Christianity does not hold that all religions are a pathway to God. The Bible doesn't advocate for that. And what foundation are you going to use for that version of Christianity? And why does it get called Christianity if Christ is irrelevant?
There's a really famous passage where God tells, I think it's John the Baptist, do not call dirty what I have made clean. I think it's something to that effect.
Peter.
Yeah, I think, you know, there's these theological outs, you know, there's these ways that we can adapt, and that we
find it funny. I'm going to stop here. I'm going to stop here and let Brady address this. I find it funny that now you're looking for ways to manipulate thinking around Christianity in order to soften it. Why not just throw it the fuck out the window until it demonstrates that it's true?
Well, I already kind of told you why, and I want to hear on.
No, you didn't.
This. How do you motivate sacrifice?
No, you didn't. No, you didn't. Stop.
I did a long time ago. Can I recap? Can I recap?
Stop.
What I said? No.
Stop. Yeah. Stop. I care about what's true. And you were just about to ask the question of how do you motivate people? And I motivate people with data and reasoned argument. I don't motivate people with lies and emotive appeals.
Mm-hmm. Can I respond?
Yeah, go.
Okay, yeah. So when we first started the conversation, what I was referring to was the problem of getting an individual to sacrifice for the whole, because there's kind of an irrationality and an illogic to that when all you're relying upon is kind of like a secular understanding and like kind of individual self-interest. So I want to know how secular moral philosophy can kind of help people overcome that. If you're not going to rely on an emotional appeal of why people are connected to each other and why I should sacrifice and do what's bad for me for the sake of the whole, even though I'll never experience any good out of that.
Well, the first thing you do, and then I still want to get Brady in here, I'm sorry, but the first thing you do is you say you have a false premise there that you're not going to get anything out of it. When you sacrifice something for the sake of society, you have to do it with the recognition that you are part of society, and therefore you and all the people that you love and care about are going to benefit. You can get to altruism starting with pure selfishness. Yep. I can say I am 100% selfish. I only care about me and Arden. Cool. Does that mean that I should support this policy that helps other people? Yes, because it makes the world better and I inhabit the world and I benefit from it. Why should I pay for education? I don't have kids. My kids aren't going to school. I should pay for education because I was educated and because this next generation is educated and because those educated individuals are the ones that are going to come up with cures to diseases that I'm likely to get. They're going to come up with fixes and improvements to things. It is myopic, incredibly short-sighted to suggest, why should I do that? It doesn't benefit me. The fact that you or anyone can't immediately see the broader benefits, that is the problem that must be addressed. And I'd rather address that problem and teach people to exercise empathy because it's actually beneficial to all of us than to lie to them and say they need to be empathetic because that's what God wants.
Can I ask a question?
Well, let me just throw this in real quick. Matt just said what I was about to say, but I'll add this to it. What you're advocating for, how do you get people to make sacrifices for the sake of society? Religion, especially Christianity, doesn't do that. Christianity is not about doing something for the benefit of society. Christianity is about doing things for the glory of God. And so the thing that you're actually trying to get people to do, you're sort of doing what me and Matt were talking about at the beginning. You're sneaking in new ideas. The person I was talking about was sneaking in new age ideas in Christian clothing. You're sneaking in sociological concerns. You're using religious language, but that's not what your religion is designed to do. Your religion is not about the benefit of humanity. Your religion is about the glory of God. So I think even your aims are not agreeing with the method that you're trying to get us to use.
Okay, can I ask the question then? So does that mean that there's kind of a hard limit to secular morality where you wouldn't be able to convince somebody to do something that's good if the sacrifice never kind of outweighs anything that they could experience in terms of the social good coming back to them?
Yes, it's called freedom and autonomy, which are foundational principles. No matter how much you might wish someone would do the right thing, you don't get to force them to, and you shouldn't trick them to, because it's entirely possible that you could be wrong about what the right thing is. But also, the foundational principle is one of individual freedom.
I see. Yeah. So you hold it in as an end in itself to not make such sacrifices, right?
No, I just explained to you how you can justify rationally sacrifices beginning with purely selfish motivation. I don't know how you missed that, and then try to say that, oh, I just opposed to it.
No, I'm not. I don't think you understood the question.
Okay.
I was asking
let's blame me for that and say it again.
No, I'm not blaming you. I probably miscommunicated.
You said I misunderstood. You didn't say you misspoke, so it's clearly my fault. Let's figure it out. What did I miss?
No, I'm sorry. Yeah,
what did I miss?
Let me
what did I miss? What did I miss? What did I miss?
Right. So my question was, right, like whether if somebody was called upon to, let's say somebody was called upon to sacrifice their life to save more lives, right? That's from an
called
individual perspective. Huh?
Called upon by who?
By a situation and like a Kantian trolley problem, something like that. I don't know. Like let's say you could, I don't know, you could do something to put yourself in harm's way and probably die and save 10 times as many lives. Right? Like so that's something where there is no social good that ever comes back to you, but it's something that probably intuitively we would argue is the right thing to do. Or would you disagree?
I don't know, because you're speaking in abstract terms, refusing to give specifics and pretending there are scenarios that justify the thing you're talking about. And we can't say that there's a scenario that justifies what you're talking about. And so Brady was asking, who is the one that's saying we need you to sacrifice? And what is your justification for bypassing their individual autonomy?
Well, I think the justification would be a social good, kind of trumping an individual good.
So does that mean that if you find something personally to be a social good, you think you have the right to force other people to comply with that?
No, I didn't bring force into
No, then why are you talking about that? You're trying to find a way to manipulate people to agree with your take on something. And my answer is you need to actually defend your take rationally and as best you can. And if you can't do that, tough shit.
Well, I'm just trying to understand if there's this limit to rationality.
Yes, there are limits to rationality. Yes, there are limits to rationality. What you're trying to do is avoid acknowledging the problems with what you're saying. Brady and I keep pointing out issues, obvious issues. And instead of answering and stop talking. Instead of answering them, you keep coming, I'm just trying to understand, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? You came in to claim that theistic morality has advantages over religious morality. And I said, I would agree that if the goal is to get people to comply with morality X, religious morality has an advantage because it's threatening eternal damnation. And it is telling you not that you're doing something right for yourself or humanity, but for God. And so, of course, that's a great advantage. Just like if I want the neighbor kid to stop making noise, I should tell him, your mom said that you need to knock that shit off and get back in the house. And it can be a blatant lie, but I might have done good with it, or at least got him to stop annoying me. And that's what you sound like, Dee. So what is the superior moral position that you feel requires dishonesty to advocate for?
Let me throw this in there too. Dee, give me 1 second. Let me throw this in there too, because it's not just the glory of God that your religion is using to motivate you. Even built into your religion, there's the idea that if you make this sacrifice for the glory of God, and it does end up benefiting the majority of people in society, for instance, you still get something out of the deal. You will be rewarded in the kingdom of heaven, right? Those who do unto the least of these as they've done to, it's like they've done it to Jesus if they've done it to the least of these. Well, guess what they get? They get their reward in heaven. So even your religion is not, I'm going to make this complete sacrifice so that everyone else can benefit. There's still a egoistic principle built into the religion that you're going to make these sacrifices for you. The only thing that me and Matt are talking about with secular morality is we're not going to use myths or falsehoods or lies to make someone think there's a benefit in there for them when there's really not.
Okay. So first of all, I never brought up the negative motivator of trying to avoid hell or avoid.
Well, that's why I went to the idea of being rewarded.
Yeah. And I think what's underlying that idea of like sort of post-life reward is something that's kind of even more fundamental and kind of on a more basic level. It's that where that idea comes from and why it's kind of like shared across so many different religions is because like all kinds of religions and even primitive mythological beliefs, they all kind of base themselves on an idea of there being a unity of life. It's fundamentally a collectivist. And I think that's where that willingness to sacrifice comes from and why it's an advantage. And I wanted to point this out, and I'm not saying that religious morality is superior to secular philosophy. I'm saying that it has this one advantage that I wanted to discuss, which is using this emotional idea of a unity of life to motivate
Stop. Because now you've just admitted that you're not claiming that religious morality is superior. You think there's a strategic advantage, which I conceded at the very beginning of this fucking call and said that I don't give a fuck about because lying and a gun has an advantage in getting people to comply as well. I don't give a fuck about advantages like that. I care about what's true and good. It would be nice if you did as well.
Okay. Are you okay? You seem kind of mad. You're cursing a lot.
CD, I'm an adult who uses language, and you've been disrespectful to me and my caller for 22 minutes without using any profanity, because when we initiated the call, I told you what we would and wouldn't care about, and you just spent 22 minutes building up to the very thing that I rejected at the beginning of this call. Therefore, you've disrespected every other person who's on hold by wasting their time, me and Brady and all of our audience, and yet you want to ask if I'm okay because I said a curse word? Yes, I'm fine, and you're gone. See ya.
Bye.
Wow. Beautiful, sir. Well
it's
said.
It's wild. It makes me think that, I don't know. D is, he mentioned that I was going to object to his bong rip theology, and he wanted to avoid that. And so I was like, okay, I get that you are... Oh, hang on. I've got something to take care of in chat. So, Brady, when is it okay to lie in order to get somebody to comply, or when it's okay to pretend that you know the truth when you don't? Is that something that?
Well, it's social engineering, right? Plato talked about this in the Republic, these noble lies, where you have different people in the society who you have these different metals that tell you what your role is going to be in life. And you're using that to motivate people to accept their lot in life, whether they're going to be in the servant class or the military, whatever. You tell these noble lies. But then you also introduce lies about the afterlife because you see the utility in that. I agree. Everything you said at the beginning could have ended the call. Yes, there is a pragmatic benefit to doing that. The question is that how you want to motivate people? Are we no better thousands of years after this idea of a noble lie that we still have to resort to that to motivate someone to do what's in the best interest of the self and the society? Yep. And I don't think we're still there. I don't think we have to remain there.
Yeah, that's the thing I find so condescending. By the way, I definitely, I mean, we're a little more open to potential kind of bong rip theology here, but the whole purpose of this show is, if we disagree, for you to call in and make a case for why your position is correct. If your position is, as Dee claimed it was, that theistic morality is, he claimed both. He said that he does believe that theistic morality, or his theistic morality, is superior. But then he said, I'm not claiming that it's superior. And I get it. Basically, what he's saying is, I know that I can't defend that I am morally correct. So instead, I'm going to say there's a strategic advantage.
Yeah.
But I've done this for 20 years. I've lectured and taught on this subject at universities. And I have a video up that's been around for ages on the superiority of secular morality. And it already took this stuff into account when Dee was in kindergarten. Now, I say that not as an insult, but Dee has learned a lot and spent a lot of time thinking in a shorter period of time. And I'm incredibly optimistic that once he stops thinking that he's caught onto something true or can make something true or massage something so that it's true-ish because he finds it beneficial, and actually starts asking himself the hard questions that you and I were asking him, which is, okay, who or what is compelling you to sacrifice for the greater good? You don't just get to say, oh, there's a scenario where it's beneficial to sacrifice the greater good and some people won't do it. Okay, cool. Let's imagine that there's a scenario where it would be beneficial for Brady to sacrifice himself for the greater good, or something, not your whole life, but something about yourself for the greater good. You have to demonstrate how you know that that sacrifice does, in fact, serve the greater good. And Brady still has individual autonomy and sovereignship. And in order to do that, all you need to do is convince Brady to do it. What if you convince Brady with things that aren't true, and it turns out you were wrong about what was in the best interest of society? See, this is what happens when we take shortcuts in thinking.
Yeah.
This is why we recognize and identify fallacies. A fallacious emotional appeal, just because emotions are involved, doesn't make something fallacious. An argument is fallacious if it says X is true or should be adhered to because of this emotional thing. It is absolutely fine to appeal to emotions and do it in a non-fallacious way. To say, my position is that we should not be disparaging children killed in a flood if they did nothing that contributed to their demise. That's it. And you could say, oh, Matt, that's an emotional appeal. I'm definitely dealing with people's emotions about children dying. But the case is about how we ought to behave and act with that. And I think it's independent kids.
I think you even made an appeal to emotions when you asked him what happens when the person finds out that you lied to them to get them to do X, Y, or Z. How would that person feel? And I immediately thought about myself when I realized that Christianity wasn't true, how I felt about that. That feeling told me that it was wrong for whoever gave me the presentation of the Christian message to have told me that.
Yeah. It's something I get asked, I've been asked a lot over the years. So, for example, my parents indoctrinated me into Christianity. They were indoctrinated into different versions of stuff, and it became convinced stuff. When I found my way out, I had to stop and think, should I be mad at my parents for lying to me? No, because first of all, I don't necessarily know that their beliefs are false, although they seem to be, and there's no demonstration that they are true. But lying is an intention, for me, is an intentional misrepresenting of the facts.
Yeah.
Simply being wrong is not a lie. And so my parents and the ministers, most of them, there are some that I'm more dubious about than others. But my parents and the ministers were sincere believers who were operating in what they genuinely, sincerely thought was the best interest of me and the world and God.
Yeah.
That they don't have a good reason doesn't mean they have the same culpability.
Yeah. I think that's what a lot of counter apologists, skeptics are doing online, is tracing the lie. Like, who should we be mad at? Like, okay, maybe not my parents, maybe not my youth pastor, they believe this, but at some point you get back to someone said something that's not true and someone knew. And so if there is any anger to be had, I think sometimes what the people who are doing the work that people like us are doing online is trying to figure out, where does that blame lie? And I don't know, I just think that's an interesting, follow the clues game that we're all playing.
Yep.
Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed that content or think you can do better than the caller, The Hang Up is live Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central on The Line. Links below.